And the Washington County Quorum Court is now called into session. Happy March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. We'll go ahead and get started. J.P. Lemming, will you lead us in prayer and pledge?
Father, just be with us tonight as we conduct business for the citizens of Washington County. Put good wisdom in our minds. Father, we just want to say thank you for the many blessings that you give each and every one of us each and every day. And let's pray for our law enforcement and let's pray for our country. Our country is just really in a mess and we need lots of prayer. We ask all this in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you, J.P. Lemming. We'll go ahead and look at the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion? Anyone? J.P. Dennis, a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, we have the adoption of the agenda. Preliminary motions. Are there any preliminary motions? That's where we read by, okay, that's J.P. Duncan.
Judge, I move that we read by title only.
Second.
Resolutions and ordinances by title only, a second by J.P. Ecke. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, we have our preliminary motions to pass. This time, citizen comments. At this point, we ask citizens to come. We have 15 minutes set aside by our county ordinances. Each citizen is there speak to no more than 3 minutes, but we ask that you come, state your name and where you're from. And with that, go ahead. Good evening.
Thank you, sir. My name is...
Hit that button there.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
There we go. Thank you, sir. Just to clarify, where we're from or where we're living at in Washington County?
State your name and what city you live in.
Thank you, sir. My name is Quinn Foster, and I currently live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Just moved. Glad to be here. It's a very wonderful place. Now, I wanted to bring up something tonight. There's been a certain issue of civil rights going on here at the court. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about federal law because it does involve the JPs who are before us here today, particularly the 1871 Enforcement Act, also known as the Third Enforcement Act, commonly known as the Ku Klux Klan Act. Now, this is a very special law that allows any United States citizen to sue a public official acting under state authority who deprives them of their civil rights. It also allows them to seek monetary damages. I would just remind the Quorum Court that we still live in the United States of America. We still operate under federal law, supreme. I understand some people in Arkansas get confused, but this is something serious. I do believe all civil rights have to be respected. I do also believe that certain parts of the law, particularly Title 42, Section 1986, which describes conspiracy by local officials to deprive people of their constitutional rights. I would encourage every person in this room to read it, especially individuals who are posting on social media of such conspiracies. With that, I will yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Citizen comments? And good evening.
Is it okay? Hello. Dear Justices of the Peace, my name is Brittany Melton.
Come up just a little bit, yes, so you can speak into the microphone. There you go.
My name is Brittany Melton. My husband and I live in Springdale, and we are in District 5, so this matter may be of particular interest to Mr. Deakins. Our neighborhood has been negatively affected by 2 different construction companies that have decided to disregard the zoning ordinance in place and carry on business activity in a residential and agricultural zoned area without first obtaining proper permitting. The names of these companies are J&J Concrete Pumping and High Star Construction. Over the last year or so, they have used the 2+ acre lot of land as a depot for their large construction equipment and materials. To carry out this business, it requires that they drive through an easement on my property where there is a 10-foot wide driveway, and at least 6 different families share this. They drive large dually trucks and at times semi-trucks to drop off and pick up equipment like excavators, skid steers, and concrete pumps. The local fire department and environmental agency has visited the property to address trash burning and illegal dumping. On a daily basis, workers come and go to collect materials and work trucks. Currently, a large shop building is being constructed for what we can only assume will be used to support their activities. We have brought these things to the attention of the planning office, but receiving help with this matter has been not easy, sadly. The planning department has spoke with the landowners and explained to them the need for a conditional use permit. But as of today, there is no CUP application but a continuation of business activity. The planning office has been trying to pursue the matter further, but has let us know that without the support of Mr. Brian Lester, this task will be difficult. I personally have made multiple attempts to reach Mr. Lester, but have not received a response to date. In order for the regulations in place to function in the manner that they were intended when they were created, likely you all agree that all the persons in place to enforce them must work together. Clearly, all of you care about public affairs, or you would not be here spending time away from your families for this meeting. So that is why I am here appealing to you in your positions of authority to support our neighborhood so that we can enjoy our properties the way that they were intended as a small farming and neighborly community, and to stop others that choose to disrupt that with no regard for the processes required so that proper consideration can be given to all. As you know, when the proper steps are not taken, this can result in the devaluing of neighboring homes, damage to private roads, excessive noise, traffic, and many other issues that a CUP strives to address prior to allowing a business to function outside of areas zoned for commercial activity. Thank you for hearing my comments.
Ms. Melton, citizen comments. Citizen comments.
Hello, good evening, Justices. My name is Sarah Minion. I work at the Vera Institute of Justice. We are a national research and data nonprofit.
Tell us where you're from.
I'm from Southern New Jersey. I live in Brooklyn, New York now. So thank you all for welcoming me to Northwest Arkansas. We've been here all week and we've had a really wonderful time. It's been really great to meet so many folks. So Vera is a national research nonprofit. We work with locally elected officials, justice system actors, and community advocates to try to improve their systems of public safety. And so we've just been here all week. We've met with some of you. We've met with some judges. We've met with the chief and some other. We got a tour of the jail this afternoon. So it's been really, really informative to get to know so many folks in the community. So I just wanted to introduce myself to all of you and say that Vera, we're here as a resource to, we work with jurisdictions to take a look at what's driving their jail populations and try to identify the pain points and think about doing things differently and implementing evidence-driven best practices and reforms that can help reduce incarceration and increase public safety in the community. So we've been invited here by the Arkansas Justice Reform Coalition, and I just wanted to say hello and again offer we are a free resource to do research, data analysis, and also share best practices from other communities. We work with, our team works with more than 40 counties across the country and in 8 states. And so again, just sharing models and best practices of things that have worked in similar communities. And also hopefully getting the opportunity to lift up some of the great work you're all doing here to other places. I think, we've heard some really great things happening from the chief and from a judge, so we're excited to just kind of keep these conversations going. Thank you.
Thank you. Citizen comments. Citizen comments. All right, with that, we'll move on to item 6, approval of the minutes. The minutes were emailed out and should be in your agenda packet. Are there any corrections? If there are no corrections, then we can go ahead and approve those minutes. We got a motion to approve in the second. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, we'll move on to the judge's report. Again, in your packet, you should have the disposal counter report. Only have one item that I really wanted to share out in our county, and it's a number. So again, I'm happy if anyone has some additional folks that you want to share with me. But we want to recognize Miss Elsie Helm. Some of you guys may know Miss Elsie. She's 102 years old 2 days ago. She turned 102 years old. So one of our centurions, yes, here in the county. Grew up in Portals, New Mexico, child number 7 in a family of 9 girls and 2 boys. Her dad gave her a horse and a wagon, traded and sold fruit and produce. Miss Essie married Bill Helm in 1937 when she was only 17 years old. They have 6 children, 3 boys, 3 girls. They moved there to a farm in Illinois, Chapel, out there near Prairie Grove in 1951, where they had cattle, sold milk, and grew a very large garden. In 1957, they bought a farm in Lincoln. They moved into town at Lincoln just before her husband Bill passed away in 1992. Miss Essie enjoys quilting and has made hundreds of beautiful quilts. Every family member has been blessed to receive at least one of her quilts. She has, again, 6 children, 20 grandchildren, 51 great-grandchildren, and 25 great-great-grandchildren. Can we just give a hand? Miss Essie's not here, but we want to make sure we share some love. I will be doing a letter and getting with J.P. Dennis and going out there to visit with her. And again, happy birthday, congratulations. And then we also had a loss. I think you guys may have saw that Sheriff Bud Dennis, former sheriff of Washington County, passed away last Sunday. I think it was a week ago, due to complications from an injury. And so we just want to keep them and their family and our law enforcement folks in our thoughts and prayers. But again, Sheriff Bud Dennis passed away. And so again, we want to keep them and their family lifted up. With that, item 8, we'll go ahead and, Counsel, will you read that one by title only?
Item 8 is an ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for Squirrels Paradise CUP.
J.P. Lemming.
The folks are here. I'd like for them to talk a little bit about it so we can ask them a question or two, please.
I don't know how.
It should be open. Go ahead.
Hi, Jody Bailey. I'm from Prairie Grove, and I want to develop or get the CUP for Squirrels Paradise. It is a private shooting range. We've taken a 60-acre parcel that will be our home site and taken a 1-acre parcel of that and developed a shooting range. My husband's a firearms instructor part-time in his off hours, and he likes to teach. So he would like the opportunity to come down here and teach to various defensive classes or educate the Boys and Girl Scouts, offer hunter safety through the state, which he does in North Dakota right now, and those type of operations. So we also want to work with the Army ROTC, giving them a place if they would like, and a lot of community outreach, just giving people a place to come. Limited hours, because we're going to live there, we don't want a bunch of ruckus, just the opportunity to hold a class now and again. And I'm open to answer any questions. Sorry, I'm not a very good public speaker.
Well, this is on its 3rd reading, so we'll walk through some pieces before we get to that.
Okay. I didn't hear location. It's in Prairie Grove, off Greasy Valley. I'm sorry.
Then we'll do his motion, and then we'll go and open it up to the court to ask questions. So you have a motion? Well, you do the motion to pass or motion to fail. Well, I mean, I don't know. And then you open it up for the JPs to discuss, and then the public comments will have.
I'm having a hard time.
Okay.
And so I want to pass it, but I got a few questions.
Yes, you'll get those.
Let's make a motion to move to pass.
Yeah. You got a motion to pass and second by J.P. Dennis. Discussion. All right, now you got your questions. J.P. Lemming and J.P. Madison.
My question is, when you say private, to me, private is me owning that piece of property, me allowing my friends and family to come to my residence, and it's private, 100% private. When you talk education and when you talk training others, when you talk getting paid for that, to me, that's a commercial business. And to me, that would be a different CUP than the one that has been applied for. Me personally, I would love to see you do it, and I'd love to see you build it, and I'll back you, but I still think there's some, I think the CUP that we're asking for is not the one that we really need.
I went through the county, visited with them, the Planning Commission, at least 3 times, if not more, to make sure that we followed all the guidelines to get things correct. We isolated the shooting range on its acre so that there was an ample buffer zone around it from other neighboring properties, so that there wouldn't be, I'm for safety. We built 10-foot tall buffers for shooting lanes just to make sure everything's safe. In doing that, we followed all the guidelines that were laid out for a small acreage development. So I'm,
Well,
I'm confused.
Well, I'm a little confused as well, because your neighbors about a mile down the road or half a mile down the road, they set a little camper deal up, and it's just a little cute deal, but they had to go through a lot of CUPs, and they done a lot of extra stuff just because it was commercial versus residential, and that's what a lot of the neighbors around there are saying. It was supposed to be residential, and it's not. Yeah.
I think it's a difference between a small acreage versus a large acreage development, according to the county regulations, is what I understood.
Well, I'm going to support it, but I want to make note, if it becomes commercialized a lot, we're going to have our county attorney readdress it, and you will have to get it in compliance if it's out of compliance.
Oh, I understand completely, yes, sir.
But I'm going to support it because I want everybody to have the right to do what they want on their property, and I think it's a good deal. And Hunter's education courses for kids is good. SWAT's good. Dick Light had done a lot of that. I know a lot about all that stuff, and it's good stuff. And I looked at your property, as you know, I was there, and it is really nice what you've done, and the shooting range is no danger, and the noise is not bad. But I guess really what I'm trying to say is, if we have CUPs and we have rules, they follow for everybody. Everybody gets treated the same. Yours shouldn't be a residential when it's really not. When somebody else is doing a business, it's got to have commercial behind it. It's got to have a CUP that's different than residential. But I'm going to support you, and I'm going to say yes for it. But if it gets out of hand, we'll see you back.
Oh, most certainly, sir. I even hired counsel to make sure that I followed all the rules to make sure it was okay. I want to keep in good graces with all the regulations.
J.P. Madison, and then J.P. Pond and J.P. Duncan.
Thank you, Judge. I was curious the hours restrictions that you talked about, are those in the CUP? The conditions, were they conditions?
We're only going to hold sporadic classes. It's not an open schedule. That's why we call it a private range. It's not open for the public to come and shoot anytime they choose. We don't have standing hours of it's open from 8 to 5 or anything like that.
Well,
it's only for specific classes that we would offer at specific times. And we would work with the neighbors if there was an issue or a conflict.
I understood that. I was just trying to understand what the conditions were on the conditional use permit, if there were hour restrictions or...
No, there weren't any hour restrictions that I'm aware of, because it was an intermittent type of schedule. It wasn't a set schedule.
Do you know what the general conditions were? I mean, because the conditional use permit has conditions. So I was curious what they were.
I am unaware of any restrictions.
Okay. And then I'm dying to know how you came up with the spelling of squirrel.
It's phonetically spelled squirrel because my husband says I'm a squirrel because I go in 8 different directions at once.
Okay,
So-
well, we got a kick out of that at the last meeting, so I had to ask. Thanks.
Was it J.P. Pond and then J.P. Duncan?
Yes, thank you. Tell me your name again.
Jody Bailey?
I'm sorry. Thank you. Is this going to be an indoor or outdoor?
It's outdoor, sir.
It's outdoors.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I was really needing to know at this time, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from the planning office if there were requests for conditions for this. You may have neighbors that would prefer certain hours of the day and maybe not certain hours of the evening and that sort of thing, which was asked about. But I'm sure all this will come about with, in an orderly fashion. Thank you for your time.
J.P. Duncan?
So this did go through the planning process. This is a CUP. It's not kind of a CUP. It's without a doubt a CUP. It passed planning. Now it's here in front of us. That's why we're voting on it. If they wanted to shoot privately, they could because that's allowed in the county. So they wouldn't be before us just to have their buddies over to shoot shotguns. I am going to vote for this, and Judge, I ask that we call the question.
All right, we got the question called. All in favor? Those opposed? All right, public comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comments? All right, Miss Myra, will you call the roll? This is on the passage of the ordinance, item 8.
Lance Johnson. Yes. Shannon Marty. Yes. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Yes. Patrick Deakins. Yes. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Sam Duncan. Yes. Chandra Washington.
Abstain.
Excuse me. Eva Madison.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford.
Yes.
Willie Lemming.
Yes.
Jim Wilson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Pass.
All right, thank you, Ms. Myra. Item 8 passes. Item 9 will go on. Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board for Premier Storage.
J.P. Deakins.
Thank you, Judge Wood. I move passage of item 9.1.
There's a motion and a second to pass item 9. Any discussion? Any discussion? Public comments? Public comments. All right, Ms. Myra, you call the roll.
Lance Johnson. Yes. Shannon Marty. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes. Bill Usry. Yes. Patrick Deakins. Yes. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Sam Duncan. Yes. Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Robert Dennis. Yes. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Yes. Jim Wilson. Yes. And Butch Pond.
Yes.
Pass.
All right, thank you, Ms. Myra. Item 9 passes. Item 10 is an appeal. This is the CUP Cruise Nazareth Retreat Center. So here's how this process will work. We will have a presentation from our planning team. Let's look at Ms. Cedars here. Ms. Cedars is going to present on behalf of the planning board. Thereafter, the applicants will have 30 minutes to speak to the Quorum Court, after which we'll have 30 minutes to hear from the public. Planning Department will present this project. Ms. Cedar, you're good to go.
Thank you. Just a moment here. Right.
evening. For the record, my name is Sita Nanthavong, and I am the senior planner for the Washington County Planning Department. The Nazareth Retreat Center conditional use permit was first heard by the Washington County Planning and Zoning Board at the December 9th, 2021 meeting, where it was tabled to allow the applicant additional time to address the board's and the general public's questions and concerns. These concerns and questions ranged from what their hours of operation would be, security, light pollution, whether or not there would be alcoholic beverages, traffic congestion and concerns, and the propensity for other quote-unquote undesirable activities. So at the January 13th, 2022 meeting, the applicant actually took note of all the questions and concerns and presented their answers. Afterwards, public discussion occurred, and there were 7 members of the public that spoke in opposition, with their main concerns being increase in traffic, loud noise at late hours. They're concerned about the disruption of quiet, the disturbance, what would happen to the natural vegetation and animals that live there. One neighbor even commented that she thought the idea of counseling services were noble, but Springdale, which is the nearest city, had counseling services available, and that Northwest Arkansas probably had enough walking trails and felt the applicant didn't need to provide such services to their clientele at that location. Once public discussion was closed, the board discussed the project, and their main concerns seemed to be that there was a lack of a traffic study, which isn't required at the conditional use permit portion of this project. This project encompasses 3 large parcels. Usually we would go through the CUP first. Once it's approved, then we would address the large-scale concerns. So the large scale was never heard because the CUP was never approved. There were a total of 5 members present. 2 voted in favor and 3 voted against, so the motion failed. The applicants filed an appeal on January 20th, 2022, which is here on our screen, and they're also here tonight to answer any of your questions. So this next part is the presentation that was first heard at the December 9th, 2021 meeting. Unfortunately, at the January 13th, 2022 meeting, the assigned project planner, which is me, was out ill, and I was unable to provide support to my team or attend the meeting. So my planning staff did an amazing job and kept the meeting from being rescheduled by rising to the occasion and presenting the projects and answering any questions and concerns the best they could. I just wanted to give a shout out to them. So with that, oops, there's the agenda. The Nazareth Retreat Center conditional use permit request is located within the northeast portion of the county, highlighted there in the red brackets. The proposal consists of 3 parcels, which are situated south of Highway 412 and along the northern side of Vaughn Road. The applicant comes before the board to seek conditional use permit approval to allow the operation and development of a retreat center in phases. The subject parcels are located within an area that is zoned for agricultural and single-family uses. Phase 1 will consist of the actual retreat center with an outdoor pavilion, a splash park, a pool, and associated parking with entrances and exits. Development of Phase 1 should commence once the applicant receives CUP and preliminary large-scale approval. Phase 2 should consist of a boat storage complex and is expected to commence sometime in 2023 once Phase 1 is complete. Phase 3 has a 2024 timeline and should contain a zipline facility. So if the CUP is approved, the applicant would have to return at each phase for large-scale review and approval. There are no other conditional use permits within the area. The subject parcels are in gray, and if there were conditional use permits, they would be in green. So the subject parcels are in red, just so they pop out a little bit more. But Beaver Lake is half than a mile away. Highway 412 is less than half a mile away. Blue Spring Village, Subdivision, the Kings River RV are about a mile away, just to give some more description as to the location of this. So the property is currently undeveloped, though some land has been cleared. And as the applicant preps for possible CUP approval and preliminary large-scale approval, they have been moving dirt. There was initial soil work from the Department of Health. The soil out there is suitable for septic. However, final design and permitting has not been conducted. That usually does not happen until the preliminary large-scale approval and construction plans have been approved. So we sent notifications out to 300 feet to property owners. The comments that were received stated concern about safety due to the remote nature of the area and the addition of many new visitors, about the noise since the area is hilly and sound may travel and echo, and that there will be extra traffic congestion along Vaughn Road. There's concern for wildlife and the demolishing of natural habitats. And what about the individual property rights? How will the applicant keep their visitors from going beyond their boundaries, where there'll be constant supervision, management, and at the property? The neighbors stated they were opposed to having drugs and alcohol in their neighborhood, and this area is still agricultural in nature, and there's livestock. Will the livestock be bothered? There are farms in the area, and having a retreat so close means that the current property owners and the residents won't be able to hunt on their own property for fear of accidentally hurting a retreat visitor. And these were the conditions that were presented to the planning board. And they are just our standard conditions for a CUP. The planning conditions basically say, this is for a retreat center. Should there be any deviation, the applicant would have to request an amendment, which would have to be approved by the planning board and presented to the Quorum Court for approval. The total area for the CUP does exceed 1 acre, so if the CUP is approved, the applicant would have to process through the large-scale development review process. And if there were any outstanding questions or concerns from the technical review, then those would have to be addressed before any final approval and construction approval would be given. Are there any questions of planning staff?
J.P. Deakins?
Thank you, Ms. Seed. I got a couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
This terminology, retreat center, has the county ever run into that in your experience at the planning yet? I mean, I'm having trouble with that because we're saying retreat center, but we're going to have events. We have a pool. We have a boat storage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems kind of all over the map, both figuratively and literally, right?
It does. So we akin this to like Mount Sequoia, for example. I think most of us are familiar with that. But Mount Sequoia is a retreat center, and they do host private, things like parties, weddings, venues. Sorry, the word is venues. That's what I'm looking for. And that those privately funded venues help to fund their public efforts, such as the actual retreats and their church religious type stuff. Forgive me for being very vague. I've never attended a Mount Sequoia retreat. I also kind of look at this kind of like the Jones Center in a way too, where we have different services for different clientele and different needs. So the Jones Center also has private venues so you can rent, like the pool, you can rent the basketball, and all that goes back into the Jones Center so they can provide more for the public. Mm-hmm. And so I think Nazareth is similar to that, and that is something that they are trying to create. We host private parties, I'm paraphrasing, so that we can fund our public outreach.
Great. The other question is, I think the best thing applicants and neighbors can do is try to work this out amongst themselves. I'm kind of surprised that there's no other, it doesn't seem to be, there's no other additional conditional use conditional use restrictions other than what are standard. Was there any discussion between planning board and applicant and neighbors about any additional conditions that might have made this more palatable or anything like that?
At the last planning board meeting, a lot of the questions would be answered during the large-scale review. It's not, we normally don't ask for things like septic permits, or, for example, or in this case, it was a traffic study, because those things cost thousands and thousands of dollars. We don't feel that it's fair to the applicant to ask for those things when there's no chance of approval or denial. So there was discussion that if they had had that, they would be more better informed. The applicant was willing to change the hours of events. At first, it was 1 a.m. for outdoor events, such as weddings. And then the applicant was willing to go back to 12 o'clock, and then from 12 to 1 would be cleanup. However, the final vote was again 2 for, and 3 against.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge Wood.
Questions? J.P. Pine.
Hi, Miss Sita. Can you tell me, did they have some kind of idea of the number of individuals that might be at at this retreat center at one time?
They estimated, and this is an estimate because they don't have architectural plans yet, so the occupancy has not been set. But the estimate that the applicant gave us was 400 indoors and 400 outdoors.
And about how many events per month? Did they have any idea about that?
At that time, I don't think they had any idea. There was not there was a percentage. I think the applicant said that 40% would be private venues, such as the weddings, and then the other 60 would be more the retreats, the counseling, the public outreach.
And I'll be with the understanding that when the health department looks at this, they will be determining some of those capacities.
Yes, sir.
Because of showers, restrooms, that sort of thing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, do we have any agencies here that can speak to or have any thoughts about the project? Would the applicant like to come and speak about the project, or? Good evening. Go ahead and tell us who you are, and go ahead and talk to us a little bit about.
George Duquesne with Balloon Associates. The owner was unable to be available today, but he did write up something for you guys that I could read right now, so that everybody has an idea of what his idea is. So he wanted to let everybody know that this is actually, he's going to name it Nazareth Family Center. Retreat Center was a misnomer when we submitted it and has kind of run with the project, but it's actually going to be named Nazareth Family Center. So if I may begin, the owner's name is Cruz Ortiz, and this is his statement. Nazareth Family Center is a nonprofit organization, a place for the community where all are welcome. We can provide adequate and suitable spaces for events, activities, and programs for movements, business organizations, religious and/or cultural events. The main objective is to give people back happiness, direction, and purpose of family life, to promote couples' unity, to promote family bonds between parents, sons, and daughters, to achieve an adequate preparation for the new generations to a family life, to provide support for widows and help single mothers with food, rent, or bills, to find them flexible jobs and scholarships for women who want to continue studying, to provide childcare at low cost to them, to prevent suicides, depression, bullying, domestic abuse, divorce, abortion, lack of identity, and child abuse. So you may ask, how will we achieve these goals? We will provide free services for psychology, counseling, advice, and family formation. We will be implementing a family pastoral mission, offering to the community the necessary and right tools with retreats, camping retreats, family and marriage conferences, juvenile conferences, formation workshops. Our goal and our dream is to grow enough to be able to help with the necessities of families in all of Northwest Arkansas. Additionally, to open other Nazareth family centers in other cities and states. This is the reason we are requesting a CUP to have nonprofit religious events. To fund the free services, we are also requesting the ability to have special events such as weddings, birthdays, or graduation celebrations, with the only objective of those activities to help fund all the services that the retreat will offer. These special events will be held no more than once a month. Our primary office hours to the public will be Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The Nazareth Family Center would like to be allowed to cease all indoor activities, religious and special, at midnight. However, if this is not possible, the center is willing to concede to other options, such as ceasing activities at 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever you deem possible, or only having religious retreat-related events. The main purpose is to have religious retreat-related events. So if special events are in your would not be acceptable, then he would be okay removing those from the CUP. The Nazareth Family Center would like to be allowed to cease religious outdoor events at 11 p.m. However, special events will be maintained indoors. However, if this is not possible, the center is willing to concede to other options, such as limiting the worshiping activities to 10 p.m. Special events will have the option to bring alcohol for their own use, and one of our staff members will be present during the event to make sure guests follow the rules, such as not selling alcohol with a license, nor providing it to minors. If the board thinks alcohol should be removed, the owner wouldn't permit any alcohol on campus, and special events will be held without any alcohol. The premises will have an intergrate that will be open during regular office hours and activities. Then, after everyone has vacated the premises, the intergrates will be closed to prevent access to the site. We believe having the Nazareth Family Center will help to increase value to the property and adjacent properties. We would like to note that at one time, the owner was deciding between the residential subdivision, where he would have to remove most of the current trees, but decided the center would be the best option to help the community and keep the natural beauty of the area. And that's it. So.
All right, any thoughts, any questions? All right, so now sounds like JP Dennis.
Thank you, Judge. You may not be the one for me to ask, but I'll ask you. I was looking at the pictures here, and I don't know if it's natural, but either a cave or a mining or something that's on 001-14922-1003 picture. And so what I'm curious about is this, and I've seen this over and over again, where we pass something and it looks good, and then it fails, and what fails is the sewer system. Can you explain to me how your sewer system is going to work for that many people? Because if it goes in there, it's going in the Beaver Lake. And if it goes in Beaver Lake, that's where the water comes out for 2-ton in that area.
Okay, so the property is sizable. It really is.
And I apologize, it's not you, it's me. I'm hearing impaired tonight. So.
The property is a sizable property, and they do have a DRA, a designated representative, a DR, on board to be able to size the septic system. I wish I could point, but the septic system will be located in an area that has been undisturbed, as is normal for septic type systems. But that will be the process. He's actually already had it looked at to be able to support the number of people that they're going to have there. So to act as a septic system.
Okay. And this wouldn't be a question for you. I think it'd be for our planning. I'm not sure if the county's in charge of that or if the state is in charge of that. Do we have a report from the state that that's acceptable? Okay, she's nodding yes. Okay. Well, that gives me a little bit of calm about it, but I tell you what, I've seen these sewer systems go bad, and then, the public pays for that. So
Well, the great thing about the state is that they do make you do a primary and alternate system. So if one starts to fail, there is opportunity to make the second system be put in place, but you're probably aware of that already.
Well, I'm aware that sewer systems have all these answers, but they seem to fail and fail and fail and fail and fail. And so when I see a sewer system that close to our drinking water, I'll have to think on this one real hard, because that's my only concern.
Sure.
Because if you can't guarantee to keep it out of the lake, then we'll all be drinking it. So, thank you.
Okay, with that, we have a action by the court. What is that going to be? This is either to approve the recommendation made by the planning board, or to deny the CUP by the, and so with that action, then right, so it's either to approve what they denied or to deny what they denied, if that makes any sense. Yeah, say that one fast. All right, so the planning board denied the CUP. Because they denied it, it went to appeal, and that's what is here before you guys. They're appealing the decision made by the planning board. So now it's your call. What is your pleasure? JP Deacons.
I would like to make a motion to approve item 12.1, and the intention is to confirm the denial, to deny the CUP, right? To affirm the planning board.
That's correct.
And
I mean, that's what you, so we have a motion to affirm 10, which is to deny the CUP. Pardon me? Sorry, there's a motion and a second. Yes. So that would be item 12.1. So there's a motion and a second to approve 12.1, which is to deny the CUP. Any discussion? Any discussion? JP Deacons?
I would just like to say, Judge, that in my mind, it takes us something pretty drastic to come in and overrule the planning board, who's been looking at this for literally months. Also, I understand the applicant's open to changes and things like that. I feel like that opportunity is to do that during the planning process. And so I have not seen the evidence to think that we've made a significant error on the planning level for us to come in and override our planning board. I just wanted to affirm that. Thank you, Judge Wood.
JP Ecke.
Thank you, Judge. I agree with JP Deacons. We have engineers, water engineers that are on their planning board, retired from ESI, and that's what they do. They see land, and what JP Dennis brought up, that's our drinking water, and it's very close. So there's a reason why they denied it. So thank you, Judge.
Any other discussion? JP Madison.
Sorry.
JP Madison.
Thank you. Forgot to push my button. I still think, even though we're going to rely on the planning board, it sounds like, I still think we need to rely. It's ultimately a legislative decision that's ours, and we have to provide the reasons why we're justifying it based on our ordinances. And so I didn't hear a lot about things like compatibility or property values, or the things that we typically have to rely on. And so I think that if we want this to stand up, we should probably put some of those out there in our record to make sure that we're saying why. I think it's an unusual project to me, and I think based on what the little bit I've heard and what I've looked at, it seems to be incompatible, because this looks like a fairly rural residential area, and I see some nodding, I think, from people who live there. But I would encourage folks to weigh in with that so that we can make sure that we create a solid record if it were to be appealed.
JP Ussery.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be voting to deny this, and the reason why is because 200 people is an awful lot of people to get out at one time and try to turn on that highway. I mean, that's just, I think that's a disaster waiting to happen. I can't imagine that, and that's why I'm going to be voting to deny this. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, public comments? Public comments. Good evening.
Good evening. I want to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to address the board, the court. We have a lot of concerns.
Make sure you tell us who you are. And
Oh,
where you
yes.
live.
My name is Cindy Harp. I live on Oak Ridge Road, and because I'm nervous, I can't remember the address.
Take your time.
Excuse me, I'm going to shoot for it, 18249 Oak Ridge Road. Our property butts right up against the property that he is building on. And of course, we've already had some issues. The first one being that we've had our property disrespected and that an 80-year-old fence line that has been there was covered in a truckload of dirt, a dump truck of dirt. So it has destroyed the fence. My husband and I are going to get out this weekend and fix a fence line, which we're really excited about, but we'd rather not be fixing it. We are planning to either do some little calves, grow cows, simply because the food supply, and it would be better for us to start growing our own food. We already garden, so we've had cows out there before. We're going to fix the fence line. I am going to tell you that if we put goats or cows on that property up against a recreational center, it will produce what we call cow stress. Now, cow stress means that it probably will quit eating. It will stop producing milk. And that's what I want to make cheese and butter with. So, furthermore, they've already, some of the neighbors and my mother-in-law has been complaining about dynamite blasting. So there's been disrespect as far as getting permits to blow up things and disturbing their homes, doing business. Some people have home offices there along with their farms. One thing that I really recognize is what it's doing to the fields where I live. There are blackberry plants out there. There's also something called poke salad. I know that you've probably all heard of that. Poke salad is really good for people with thick blood. It's also a source of food that you can eat. There's another thing that's called sassafras. It's a really good source for tummy aches. If you have a tummy ache, sassafras tea is really good. We all know about pine needle tea. These things can sustain you, especially during a time when the economy is really bad. And so many of us are going back to cultivation. I will have a huge garden. I fear for people crossing the fields and taking things that belong to me that I've worked hard and grown on. I do also notice it's called Oak Ridge Road for a reason. There are some dangerous ravines out on the properties. If you have a child or somebody wandering and they wander off onto the property, it will take somebody to scale down that bluff and get you out of there. I know this because I've climbed down it many times and wished I hadn't.
Okay, Ms. Harp.
Okay, well, I just want to thank you once again, and I vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comments? Final public comments?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Clint Harp, and I live on 18249 Oak Ridge Road. Got some concerns that's been brought up in the past, but I'm concerned about the increased traffic, the traffic noise, the light pollution from the parking lots, and how it will affect the wildlife and the livestock. There's a lot of wildlife out there. There's a deer, bobcat, coyote, fox, bears, raccoons, red-tailed hawks, ducks, geese. I've even seen a few bald eagles out there. All of this is going to be disturbed by the constant flow of campers and hikers and zip liners and just the noise from the retreats and the meetings and the noisy celebrations is going to be there. And with this increase of traffic, there's going to be an increased chance of the wildlife just getting hit pets that we have, there's going to be an increased chance to get hit there. One of my major concerns is how the light pollution is going to, from the parking lot, who's going to be affecting the animal habitats and their natural behavior. I'm also concerned how it's going to affect the night sky. My wife and I are amateur stargazers, and we've been out there. We've seen meteor showers and comets and even lunar eclipse. And not only us, but there's people who just come out there to enjoy just looking up at the sky. And say what you will, but parking lots, even though, however, when they're lit, it affects how you see the sky, and it's just hard to see some of the stuff that with the naked eye if you got lights shining out there. A few other concerns. I'm concerned about security. I think you heard there's going to be a fence out there, but is this going to be 24/7 security? Is it going to prevent people from entering retreat after hours? And I heard there was going to be a gate, so I think that's been addressed. But me as a teenager, if I found a parking lot out in the middle of the country, there's just all kinds of things that I would have probably done in my day that wouldn't have been too good. So I'm just thinking about these teenagers of today. What about the drinking and the drugs that people might sneak in and be doing? And who's going to ensure that these people are not going to trespass from that retreat site onto the private property? My wife's already mentioned about the fence being torn down just from the dumping, and there's no clear border there. And people walking out on these trails, I think it was one of the plans, they could wander off down into private property. This is a quiet, rural community, and this is where we live and we farm. And this is not a place for a bunch of noisy strangers to come out and party. Mr. Ortiz, he doesn't live there, but we do. And he's not going to be affected the way we are. So, I mean, if he would like to just come out there and live and then see how it affects him, he's more than welcome to.
All right, Mr. Harp.
And this is a quiet, respectable community, and we'd like to keep it that way.
Thank you. Public comments.
My name's Scott Phillips, live at 18321 Oak Ridge Road. My property joins his property on the north side. A couple of things that we've talked about and discussed earlier. Mr. Usher, appreciate your comments on it. It's going to be the traffic problem, pulling out on 412. Got a man here that works on the fire department. He's had to respond there several times. We just had another accident last week pulling out on 412 that involved a logging truck full of logs and a truck and a trailer with a boat on it. You probably know who lost that deal. So that was another instance. When you're going to have, excuse me, they said up to 800 people could possibly be there at one time. They have confirmed there will be drinking there. What's going to happen when you've got 200, 300, 400 people at night pulling out of there that has been drinking? It's going to end up a lot of problems. And another deal that I want to talk about is he's making these secessions as to what he will do and what he won't do and everything. If he's granted this and he's able to go in there and build these facilities, who's going to hold him accountable to say, no, you can't have amplified music. No, you can't do this. You said you weren't going to in the past. Who will hold, is there anybody that will be able to keep them responsible to hold their word to do what they have said they were going to do? And as far as the drainage, that was discussed in the first meeting. There is a hollow coming off of that property that runs right down to the boat ramp out there right behind our house. It runs down through there, disrespecting the neighbors. As soon as he bought that property, he come in with a dozer, and I didn't know what was happening, so I walked outside my door, and he was right along my property line cutting roads in. And so I said, hi, this is who I am. Who are you? And he told me, and I said, what do you got going here? Well, I'm cutting in trails to ride four-wheelers, dirt bikes, all this sort of stuff right against the side of our house. That was a little bit disturbing, thinking, okay, so now we're going to have to deal with this too, you know, the noise level of ATVs and all that sort of stuff. just seems to be a lot of disrespect there as far as the neighbors and the people that are around there. And like I said, I was wondering who would be able to, if he goes ahead and does this deal, we'll hold him accountable, hold his feet to the fire, and make him do what he said he was gonna do on this. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Citizen comments? Public comments?
Yes, my name is James Key. I'm an architect with Key Architecture here in Fayetteville. We've worked with Mr. Ortiz in the past, and I'm here to speak specifically about the conditional use and what this instrument is intended to do. I understand there's a lot of concern for traffic, for use, for hours, for alcohol, for all types of things. I think there are means for the Quorum Court, for the county sheriff, for the highway department, for whoever needs to be involved to make sure that this owner is complying with the conditions of the conditional use. And in fact, if he is not, the Quorum Court can rescind, if I'm not mistaken, the conditional use and cease operations or use it as a tool to force compliance. I've known Mr. Ortiz for over a decade. He's an upstanding citizen. He has a commercial venue in Springdale for events and activities. He's operated it for quite some time without any problem of operational issues, excessive drunkenness, sales to minors, all of those types of things. As he's expressed, he's willing to rescind some of these guidelines to try to appeal to the planning board first and now to the Quorum Court. He's willing to adjust his hours of operations, his types of uses. I don't think it's unreasonable to try to consider having a once-a-month fund-generating event that he would actually generate revenue from to allow users to use this facility to help fund his nonprofit offerings. The same is true for the boat storage. If you aren't familiar with this area, Vaughn Road was what had been Highway 68 and was the main thoroughfare east and west through Arkansas until Highway 412 was done and the new bridge put in, and it became a small spur that feeds a boat ramp and a Bryce Marine commercial business right below here. Again, I think that the conditional use, if approved, is the vehicle to allow a control of what a citizen in a county does with their property.
Thank you.
He's very willing to go through the large-scale process and comply with all the issues of drainage and development per code, prevent runoff. As he said, we've already had a DR do perk test on the site to make sure that it would conform and a septic system could be installed that would comply with state regulations.
Thank you very much.
So I just wanted to express that
all right.
As a professional, a CUP is something that we count on to proceed, and if we can't get past
Appreciate
this
it.
point, he can amend and we can come back before you, but we would like you to consider this seriously.
Thank you very much.
One of the issues had been that the two planning boards we went to had minimal representation.
Ms. Myra, we'll go ahead and take the vote. The vote is on the... Yes. Oh, it's on. All right, so I'll just move on to the second. Go ahead.
So the motion is an ordinance denying a conditional use permit recommended for denial by the Planning and Zoning Board for the Nazareth Retreat Center.
It's on its first read. Nothing else happens, and they'll move on to the second reading next month, unless there's suspension of the rules to move forward. J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Judge. I'd like to suspend the rules and advance this to the second reading.
There's a motion to suspend the rule, move to a second reading.
I'll second.
And there's a second. All in favor? Those opposed?
No.
Ms. Myra, will you do a roll call? The time is up.
Lance Johnson. Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Usry. Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan. Chandra Washington.
No.
Eva Madison. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson. And Butch Pond. 4 against. So pass. No, sorry. 10.
All right, so this will go on to next month's agenda for a second reading. Item, let's see,
I'd explain, Judge, I'd explain that a little bit to the guests out there.
so if we fail to read a second time, it's on his first reading. He'll go to next month to reread a second time, and then he'll move to a third reading the following month unless rules are suspended, to read it for a third and final time next month. And then that's when there'll be actually a vote whether or not to deny the CUP. Well, that vote will happen after the third final reading.
Thank you, sir.
All right, item 13, Council, will you read those consent agenda items?
Item 1 on the consent agenda is an ordinance appropriating $61,784.63 from the unappropriated reserves of the general fund to various line items in the Circuit Court 4 budget for 2022. Item 2 is an ordinance changing the grade of the GIS mapping specialist position in the IT budget and appropriating $57,544.06 from various funds to various budgets for 2022. Item 3 is an ordinance projecting revenue and carryover totaling $7,496,055.79 in various funds and appropriating expenditures of $7,496,055.79 to various funds and budget line items for 2022. Item 4 is an ordinance appropriating $88,546.30 from unappropriated reserves in the general fund, or the general and jail funds, for the purchase of tasers. Item 5 is an ordinance appropriating $109,386 from unappropriated reserves in the general fund to the vehicles line item in the environmental affairs budget for 2022. Item 6 is an ordinance appropriating $33,020 from the Animal Shelter Special Projects Fund to various line items in the Animal Shelter Special Projects budget for 2022. Item 7 is an ordinance recognizing additional revenue of $134,118.65 and appropriating $134,118.65 from unappropriated reserves of the general fund to various line items in the sheriff's budget and jail budget for 2022. And item 8 is an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $19,550 in the Animal Shelter Grant Fund and appropriating $19,550 from the Animal Shelter Grant Fund to the Animal Shelter Grant Fund budget for 2022.
J.P. Deakins.
Judge Wood, I move passage of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass the consent agenda items. Ms. Myra? Oh, discussion. Any discussion? Public comments? Public comments?
Quinn Foster from Fayetteville. For number 4, has there been any discussion possibly by the Quorum Court to use a different device known as a bowler wrap instead of continuous use of tasers, possibly? Bowler wraps are non-lethal detention devices. They basically shoot out a Kevlar rope. They can bind a suspect or individual who may be suffering from a mental condition and safely restrain them, even at a distance. I know tasers are kind of the go-to, but tasers still are dangerous. People can have underlying conditions. People can have certain kind of medical issues that could possibly be exacerbated by the use or deployment of a taser device. So I would just ask the Quorum Court for number 4, consider a healthier approach to law enforcement. With that, I'm going to end and yield my time.
Public comments? Ms. Myra?
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
Shannon Marty. Sean Simons. Bill Ustry. Patrick Deakins. Lisa Ecke. Sam Duncan.
Yes.
Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Eva Madison. Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Jim Wilson?
Yes.
And Butch Pond?
Yes.
Pass.
All right, consent agenda items passed. We're on item 14. Council, will you read that one by title only?
An ordinance appropriating $335,785.55 from the American Rescue Plan Act Fund to the Engineering Architecture line item in the American Rescue Plan Act budget for 2022.
And JP Deacons.
Thank you, Judge Wood. I move passage of item 14.1.
You have a motion to pass item 14, a second by JP Ecke. It's on its first reading. It's appropriation ordinance. Okay, so again, it will require 10 to pass on its first, otherwise it'll go to the second reading. Any discussion by the court? JP Madison and then JP Lemming.
Thank you, Judge. I'm not going to be able to support this because I don't think it's a proper use of the ARPA funding. I think that we're creating a big risk in post guidelines that say we can't use ARPA funds for jail expansions. The first time we appropriated the money, the guidelines didn't say that. And I don't think calling it a reappropriation and trying to do it a second time after those new guidelines are out spares us. And so I think that the responsible thing to do is if we are serious about this expansion, then we need to figure out a way to pay for it out of county funds. And so this should come out of unappropriated reserves. But the court seems insistent on using ARPA funds for it, and I think that's financially detrimental to the county, so I'll be voting no.
JP Lemming.
My question was, I thought we'd done 250 for the jail and 250 for the Justice Building. What happened to that figure? That's 500, right?
Some of the money's already been spent. So the sheriff's office has already spent a large portion of their money. That's why there's only $355,000 of that amount left.
Okay, so we've got some of the architect work and drawing and stuff done. Okay, thank you.
JP Rio Stafford.
Thank you, Judge Wood. I know I brought this up at the Budget Committee meeting regarding this ordinance, and I agree with what JP Madison said. I have a lot of concerns about using this money in this way because the Treasury Department changed its rules after what happened in Alabama. Alabama, when the interim rules came out, Alabama announced that it was going to spend all of its state ARPA money essentially to expand its prison system. And some members of Congress spoke out about that, and because of the input from that at the Treasury Department changed its rules to specifically say some capital expenditures may not be eligible. For example, constructing a new correctional facility. Now, I understand that, on the flip side of this, that the county's already hired contractors and private contractors, as a private business owner, I understand that contractors need to get paid. So my compromise proposal with this is to say that I don't think that we should be pulling this out of the American Rescue Plan Act Fund. I think it would be safer to do what Alabama has eventually decided to do. They are not constructing out of their American Rescue Plan Fund. They're constructing out of their revenue replacement fund. They pulled out of ARPA for revenue replacement, and they're using that money, but they're not using the original ARPA funds. So I would like to propose an amendment to this ordinance, and the amendment would be that instead that this appropriation come out of Fund 1006, the ARPA Revenue Replacement Fund.
Second.
Well, there's an amendment on the floor, a second, to, as opposed to having this coming out of the ARPA, to come out of the replacement fund. Discussion? Just go to the vote then. Ms. Meyer, let's go ahead and just do a roll call. This is to amend. amendment on the, this is only on the amendment to this item 14.1.
Lance Johnson? No. Shannon Marty? No. Sean Simons? No. Bill Essery? No. Patrick Deakins? No. Lisa Ecke? No. Sam Duncan? No. Chandra Washington?
Yes.
Eva Madison?
Yes.
Robert Dennis? No. Evelyn Rio Stafford? Yes. Willie Lemming? No. Jim Wilson? No. Butch Pond?
No.
All right, so the motion to amend failed, so we're back to the original motion. Any other discussion, J.P. Pond?
Yes, thank you. And I would ask the county attorney to correct me if I'm mistaken on this, but this money we're talking about to be spent down at the jail is to construct a quarantine area for men detainees, a quarantine area for women detainees, a dispensary area for detainees who are actually ill, and expand the booking area. And this is the way I understood this, and all of that has come to our attention, the needs there, because of the COVID. And so, if we wind up being wrong about this, I'm really going to be confused about what happened, what went wrong. I'll be voting for this. This looks like something that directly affects the detainees at the county jail, who don't really get to come up here and speak for themselves. And anyway, I'll be voting yes. Thank you.
J.P. Rio Stafford.
So I just wanted to read a little further from the ARPA rules on page 200, where they give their reasoning for putting the new language in there regarding correctional facilities. So what they say in there are, in addition, construction of new congregate facilities, which would generally be expected to involve expenditures greater than $1 million, would generally not be a proportional response to mitigate or prevent COVID-19 because such construction is generally expected to be more costly than alternative approaches or capital expenditures that may be equally or more effective in decreasing the spread of the disease. These alternatives include personal protective equipment, ventilation improvements, utilizing excess capacity in other facilities or wings, or temporary facility capacity expansions. And they have a footnote. For instance, the CDC has published detailed recommendations for nursing homes, long-term care facilities, and correctional and detention facilities on infection prevention and control. Many of these recommendations are relatively low cost, such as proper use of PPE. In addition, increasing the vaccination rates, as talks about nursing home staff, among the most important ways to decrease spread of the disease. So that's the justification that they give for these.
Okay, J.P. Deakins.
Thank you, Judge Wood. I feel like we just got argued the point. I don't know if people haven't been to the jail, haven't seen it with their own eyes, but there is no segregation down there. If I had to work in there and I had PPE on, I'd still be concerned. A couple things I want everybody to remind: we're going to have to do something at our jail because of these realities that we now face. We owe it to the taxpayers to fully vet out, using the money that we were told to offset COVID-related issues, to make sure that we can pay that for that. And I'm going to say that I'm going to chase that down to the very bitter end. I would also like to say we undertook this work under the interim rule. We hired all these people. This is us making sure that we satisfy our commitments under the interim rule, not even the final rule. And finally, I'd like to say We're being given rules by the Department of Treasury. These are not laws. And I look forward to a new Congress this year, and I look forward to a new administration 2024, and we're going to get some clarity on this. I think that's really going to help us. So thank you, Judge Wood.
Any other discussion?
I'm
Oh, Joe,
on.
you are, yeah,
I'm
JP
on.
Madison.
I just wanted
Mhm.
Somehow I stayed red, but I didn't want to just start
Okay, go
talking.
ahead.
So. Thank you. Folks, we are kidding ourselves if we're going to say that a jail that's going to be finished in 2025 is to combat COVID. That's the cold, hard truth. We are calling this a COVID-related expansion. We are saying that we're doing it for segregation at the jail. The completion date is 2025. I sure hope right now COVID is over. I think a lot of us in this room are sitting here with a lot of hopes that it's over. So can we really sit here in good faith and say that a 2025 jail expansion is related to a pandemic that started, at least here, in March of 2020? I don't think so. It's pretty clear to me that this body is being controlled by partisanship and disdain for our current president. And instead of using the money that the federal government has given us free of any strings, we got $4 million that we didn't do anything with from the CARES Act. We just put it in the bank. We took $10 million in revenue replacement from the ARPA funds that we apparently have no strings attached, put it in the bank. We're taking the money that could be used for the community, the only portion of the money that has restrictions, and tying it up on a jail expansion to say to the people in Washington, we don't care about your guidelines because they're not actually laws. That's what we're doing. And let me say this, partisanship aside, this is a fiscal responsibility issue. We are talking about undertaking a $23 million jail expansion. We don't have $23 million to pay for it if the second Biden administration comes asking for that money back. So we need to be reminded of our fiduciary obligations to the citizens of this county, not to basically put them bankrupt because we don't like what Washington has told us. We are voting here on March 17th, 2022, post regulations that say we can't use this money for a jail expansion, and we're saying we don't care. We're going to do it anyway. You guys can just sue us later for it. That is so disrespectful to the taxpayers of Washington County, because when we have to pay that money back, we're going to have to go to them and say, you're going to have to raise a sales tax to pay for this because we decided that politics were more important than fiscal responsibility.
JP Madison, JP Ecke.
Thank you, Judge. Everything that my colleague just says is not what I believe, what I know. I know our sheriff and his department would not submit a proposal and use it in a different way. And for the colleague to say that that was not true, and to say that what my attitude is, or the rest of our attitudes are towards this, is a covert plot and plan, and it has to do with politics. You should apologize to your colleagues for calling him a liar, and to our sheriff, because that is not what this body is supposed to do. That is not our constitutional duty, as to whether or not, in your opinion, people are not telling the truth. Thank you, Judge.
Discussion. Public comments? Public comments.
Once again, Quinn Foster. Taxpayer. I actually love that name. You know, it makes me sound better than somebody having to force over my money, you know, every time I swipe a credit card, or every time I purchase a drink, or every time I do anything here in Washington County. Now, I will say that here we do have some very high taxes, but I'm willing to pay for them. There's nothing wrong with paying for things the community needs. Does Washington County need a federal lawsuit because funds were misused? No. Me, as someone who will be living here probably for decades, probably for the rest of my life, because frankly I like this part of Arkansas, am I comfortable with some of the statements that have been made here tonight by certain people suggesting that they are foregoing their constitutional duty by bringing up that, yes, the entirety of this expansion is political, especially when someone makes a reference towards Congress, towards a national election coming up later this year? I just find it really weird. Guys, it's a jail. And let me be honest, I'm, as an activist, I'm a very frequent flyer and being detained and what have you. That's not going to do anything to stop infection. It's not going to do anything to stop COVID. It's not going to do anything to stop anything in jail. Just being honest. We all mingle. We all hang around with each other. Everybody shares things. That's just the way it is. So again, what are we doing here, folks? Are we really going to play hardball with the federal government? That worked out so well in 1865.
Public comments?
Josh Moody, Fayetteville. I'll be brief because I think a lot of what I was going to say has already been said, but my greatest concern with this, especially because this is a down payment towards a larger expenditure later, is this, regardless of who is in office later, whether it's on county or federal level, the fact that's an unknown. So if we're going to invest $20 million or $23 million out of the American Rescue Funds into a jail expansion, there's a reasonable expectation that we as in Washington County taxpayers might have to pay that back. And if we're being fiscally responsible and trying to protect and be good stewards of Washington County citizens, let me put it like this. If you want to build a jail, if you want to expand the jail, but just be forthright with your taxpayers and say, look, it's going to cost you more money. Are you okay with that? Maybe leave it up to them. And if that's what the people want, then maybe that's what it is and that's how it should be. But you're being dishonest at best. You're being shady, possibly more accurately. And just be honest with what you're doing. In 2019, it went down because this body did not want to raise taxes. But now we're going to go ahead and put it through and raise taxes without telling the people we're raising taxes. And some of you probably hope not to be in this position anymore. It won't be your problem, but you're leaving it to your successors to deal with. That seems incredibly short-sighted and incredibly selfish. And again, incredibly fiscally irresponsible. Thank you.
Public comments?
My name is Kathy Short. I'm from Fayetteville, and I agree with everything J.P. Madison said. This issue is what brought me here tonight. This issue is what made me start paying attention to what's happening here. And what I'm seeing here tonight is I'm finding it very disappointing with what you're doing and how you're playing with my tax money. So I'm clearly against using that care relief as an addition to our jail. I'm a teacher. I didn't see a whole lot of that done in schools to prevent COVID. They're packed in there that you couldn't even distance. And y'all are going to spend all of this money. I understand that the jail needs to be improved. I understand that. But I don't think it needs to be done with these funds. Thank you.
Public comments?
Gladys Tiffany, Fayetteville. I just wanted to take an opportunity to say thank you to J.P. Madison and J.P. Real Stafford and others who have worked so diligently in the past few years to try to make sure that the Quorum Court had the opportunity to be responsible and fiscally responsible and bring in. There have been a number of times when the court was apparently not aware of points where they were actually breaking their own rules, and there have been so many good attempts to really kind of try to keep that in order and rectify that. And I just wanted to express how grateful I am that the attempt has been made in spite of it all.
Public comments.
My name is Dawn Cannon, and I live in District 14. And correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I'm under the impression that Benton County is putting a similar issue on their ballot to the citizens. And I'm just, my question is, can we do that? If I'm wrong and they're not doing that, please correct me, but why can't the citizens of the county that the 15 people, 14 minus 1 JP, that y'all represent, why can't the citizens vote on this big amount of money? Thank you for your time.
Public comments. Public comments.
My name is Cindy, 18249 Oak Ridge Road. I do have a comment about this. I do remember just prior to the big event of everything closing down, it was Sebastian County Prison where people were dying by huge numbers. And I remember a family member having a family member that didn't make it out of that prison because they didn't have the right facilities, the right treatment plans, and the right programs. It is true that we are sending our people there, hopefully, to, they go to prison and to jail to reform and to pay their debt to society. But it shouldn't include death if you've just run a hot, bad check. People do die from diabetes. They have problems with flu. They have problems with other things other than just COVID. It's not fair to those families that want to get their family members back and don't get them because they didn't have proper treatment. I thank you.
Public comments.
Hi, Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I echo some of the other sentiments that came forward today, so I just want to add, obviously there's a lot of concern whether or not with the final rule that came out, whether or not these monies can actually be used for a jail expansion. I'd echo, there's a lot of solutions that have come forward in regard to either using some of the funds that we have today or going to taxpayers and asking whether or not they'd like to expand the jail. And to the north of us, that's correct. Benton County has said that they're going to put it on the ballot. But also, we originally had looked at the ordinance in August that was passed was for architectural services for $250,000. And so as we start to think about this amount of debt that we potentially are taking on or this expenditure over time, we've heard the jail's going to be $20 million, it's going to be $25 million. We know building costs are escalating on all projects. We can learn by the city of Fayetteville, who's building a $38 million new police station. They've actually had to scale back a lot of that project. They're actually in Dallas right now because I think they're having to meet with architects to change plans because of increases in cost. So we're talking about this is going to be, several years of us building, so that escalation is going to happen. But I also wanted to point out, just in case some of you are not aware, that the way the contracts read, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the contracts that I saw that were signed didn't say $250,000 for architectural services. They actually said 7% of the total of the project, both for architectural services and for a project manager. And if my math is correct, if you do 7% of a $20 million project, that's $1.4 million. So I'm super curious. I know that we've already paid a little under $200,000 for architectural services to this vendor. So I'm super curious if those folks are gonna be coming back for another $1 million. I haven't had are seeing this body discuss that. If we're capping this at the 250,000 ordinance that we passed, or if we're going to be having another discussion about additional charges that are going to go against ARPA. So obviously we have a finite amount of ARPA funds, and so if we're going to start dipping into those to the tune of $2.8 million between those two contracts, I'm curious with escalation cost of this project, that number at 7% would go up. So I hope we'd consider that as well when we're voting on this tonight. Thank you.
Public comments. Public comments. All right, Ms. Myra? We're voting on item 14.1. Motion to approve item 14.1.
Lance Johnson. Yes. Shannon Marty. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes. Bill Usry. Yes. Patrick Deakins. Yes. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Sam Duncan.
Yes.
Chandra Washington.
No.
Eva Madison.
No.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Evelyn Rios Stafford.
No.
Willie Lemming.
Yes.
Jim Wilson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Pass.
All right, 14.1 passes. Council, will you?
Item 15 is an ordinance appropriating $15,883.80 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to various line items in the Veteran Services budget for 2022.
Thank you, Judge Wood. I move passage of item 15.1.
Got a motion and a second to pass item 15.1. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any public comments? Any public comments? Ms. Myra?
Lance Johnson. Yes. Shannon Marty. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes. Bill Usry. Yes. Patrick Deakins.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke. Yes. Sam Duncan.
Yes.
Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Evelyn Rios Stafford. Willie Lemming.
Yes.
Jim Wilson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Pass.
All right, item 15.1 passes. Council, would you read item 16?
An ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $404,265 and appropriating said $404,265 to various funds and various budgets for 2022.
J.P. Deakins.
Thank you, Judge Wood. I move passage of item 16.1.
There's a motion and a second by J.P. Usry. Discussion? J.P. Lemming and then J.P. Madison.
So this money was generated by the sales of all of the vehicles that you had in the auction, is that correct?
Number of items I was in there, yes.
So I guess when you say various lines, I guess each vehicle, all this breaks down and goes back into the pot it come out of? Is that kind of the way that is?
It goes back into the road department. Well, some of it goes back into the road department budget. Some of it goes into the environmental affairs budget.
Environmental affairs, is that, I know you bought a new truck. Is that Boston Mountain? Is that the truck that's down there? That's ours too, isn't it?
We don't have any Boston Mountain vehicles down at our South Campus. Everything down there is Washington County's vehicles.
But the one that's at Boston Mountain, it belongs to us too. That's a bucket truck.
There were some trucks that we did transfer with, or they utilized that are ours, I believe. I'd have to. That contract was done a long time ago. I'd have to go back and check it.
Okay, thank you.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Judge. I was just concerned that it looked like we were selling. I realize it's already been sold, but I just think there were a lot of items on this list that, bridge platforms. I don't understand why we bought bridge platforms if we're having to turn around and sell them for several $1,000s. Bridge forms, I mean, it looks like we sold all of our bridge building equipment, which makes me wonder why we bought it. I mean, and it's hundreds of thousands, it's $100,000 just on bridge stuff. And then someone explained to me that the pothole fixing equipment we sold, which sounds like we need, it just seemed like a whole lot of excess equipment to be selling. It just made me wonder why we bought it all. If we can turn around and sell at auction at obviously somewhat a reduced price and make $400,000, I think it begs the question of why we bought it in the first place. So I'm glad we're shedding some sunlight on this.
JP Dennis.
Thank you, Judge. I'll just speak briefly to that. I went down to the road department to just visit, and they took me on a tour and showed me everything that was for sale. And folks, it was worn out. If anything, we ought to issue an apology letter to the people who bought it, because it was just flat out worn out. I didn't see a thing that I'd given you $100 for, except for one trailer. There was one trailer down there that I kind of thought, that if the axle works, it might be all right. But other than that, folks, it was just absolutely worn out stuff. And I'm not an expert, but I know rust when I see rust. I know flat tires when I see flat tires. And I believe the people when they tell me, you don't want to buy that, the motor doesn't even run. And so, like I say, maybe what we ought to do is apologize to the people that bought it, because it wasn't very good stuff. And then the way I understood it on the bridge stuff was given to us because the state wouldn't use it. And then for us to use it, you had to sandblast it, plus you had to cut it to specifications that fit the bridge, which is decided by Arkansas Department of Transportation, not by any of us. And then you'd have to go in and physically cut it, so it's cheaper to buy new than it is to try to use that and refit it. So there's more to the story than what it sounds like. I mean, take a tour sometime and go down and see what's there. And it's out there for the public. It was there for you to buy. I didn't see anybody bid on any of it. Probably not. I see some smiles like, no, we didn't want it either. So I don't normally do that, but I went down and I just took a tour of the whole thing, and I was amazed. So anyway, amazed at how bad it was. Thank you.
Any other discussion? JP Ussery.
Thank you very much, Judge. I also went down to the road department after the sale and talked to them, and they took the money from this and they bought several things that will save the county quite a bit of money. They updated some of the equipment they were having to constantly repair that wasn't dependable. They bought a trailer that they can take two pieces of equipment on instead of one. And they bought some belly dump trucks, some things that will actually save us money in the long run. And so they used this money for that. So I'm very proud of what they did down there. They did a good job. Thank you.
Discussion. And before I go to the public comments, I will ask, I didn't make it to the auction, so I'm just curious how many other counties end up coming to the auction or bidding on some of that. And I think 5 years ago, when we first came in, we did our very first auction just because I was just flabbergasted how much stuff we had down there. And again, most of it was old. We did our first auction, and I think it was maybe $775,000 that was sold. But what hit me was not so much that we had all this, in my mind, very old and dilapidated, but it was a number of counties that were so happy to get to that equipment because they couldn't afford anything new. And so it really helped other counties get tractors and dozers, things that they could not afford on their own because, again, they're a much smaller county and all. So anyway, public comments. Public comments. Ms. Myra?
Lance Johnson. Yes. Shannon Marty. Yes. Sean Simons. Yes. Bill Ussery. Yes. Patrick Deakins. Yes. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Sam Duncan. Yes. Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Robert Dennis. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Yes. Jim Wilson. Yes. Butch Pond. I will pass.
All right, item 16-1 passes. Committee reports, county services had no meeting. J.P. Deacons, finance and budget.
Thank you, Judge Wood. Reports in the packet.
And J.P. Johnson, jails and law enforcement courts.
Thank you, Judge. Your report's in the packet.
And personnel had no meeting. With that, meeting adjourned.